All right, that was a lot of fun, and we got the namespace cleanup going, and we got a preview of what your captions and excerpts look like. Really excited actually to see what this tool can do on our video in terms of coming up with cool excerpts, snap pictures, and it'll because I you had mentioned at one point you're gonna add something that looks for laughs. Mm.
Oh, because Google Gemini, it's amazing. One is like super cheap, but it can actually do laughter detection, which before you had to spin up your own little model to do. Just like most transcription services don't do laughter detection. And so I bet like when we got something really cool done, one of us laughing. And so that might be a good trigger for something of interest.
So that was fantastic. I'd love to hear what you got out of it, Gene.
Yeah, a whole bunch. I think there's a scholar named Dr. Anders Ericsson. So his field of study is acquired learning. How do learners learn? And you need fast feedback. And in general, you really need help from like a coach, right? Someone who's further up the learning scale than you. And so for us to be able to spend 2.5 hours working on this together on a problem that I really wanted to solve was just a real gift. The fact that you were able to say things like, oh, dude, this is not very chop. You're doing a lot of typing and just make me give up some bad habits. Like, how do I get the LLM to actually do more of the work for me? And I guess to everyone out there, if Steve ever makes an offer like that to say, hey, pair on something together, you should say yes. How about if I share with you like what the end product looked like and some reflections I actually wrote up last night?
Love it.
All right, so here we go. Share the screen. The video that I processed first was this amazing talk from Dr. Erik Meijer. He was the brains behind Visual Basic and C# Link. He went to Meta Facebook to work on Hack, the compiled PHP language. And this is like an incredible talk about how LLMs, upended so much of the research he was doing at Meta. And it's just amazing reflections on how he doesn't want to do coding manually anymore. And it's just this beautiful talk. There's one clip here that he's talking about when ChatGPT came out. Basically, these 3 specialized models that they built to code gen and finding and fixing bugs. Basically, GPT 3.5 could do it better. He was amazed that it could actually do a great job writing hack, even though it's a language not really used widely outside of Facebook. And so there's the other quote that at 22 minutes where he's talking about, you probably can't hear that, but I'm going to play this. He's talking about what does it feel like for the 3 models that he built internally to essentially be replaced by ChatGPT 3.5 overnight. He said it felt like we were digging a tunnel using pickaxes and shovels. And then someone shows up with dynamite and heavy equipment, essentially saying, get out of the way, kid. The professionals are here. It's such an amazing story, right? About how these large frontier LMs are just easily replacing and outclassing these smaller, more specific models. He just talks so beautifully about some people say that these LLMs are going to enfeeble us. And he's like, nonsense. Like the most precious thing we have is time. And if a machine can do it for us faster, like we should use it. There's this incredible thing he says here is that we thought that doctors and surgeons and plumbers, they'll be the first to get offshore and outsourced. And he's like, nope. And doctors and we are going to be first to be replaced by large scale automation.
Developer and lawyers.
Developers and lawyers. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, this is a great talk, and I loved being able to publish it, right? Just each one of these snippets, there was some piece of wisdom, something really amazing that made me take that screenshot. Oh, and by the way, you know what the coolest part was is he responded last night. He said, Gene, looks amazing. Thanks for doing this. But it's a faster way to grasp the talk, even then as opposed to watching it to a speed. Steve, I can tell you that felt pretty good. So that's what the string of thread of videos looked like, which I thought was just super fun and rewarding to do.
Yeah, because you just did each one of those using your tool.
Yeah, I got it down to, I had one more button to my tool and all of them got generated in individual files. And I actually concatenated them all together. And I actually didn't use that just because it was actually easier to watch one by one.
Cool. Any other reflections?
Yeah, so I actually wrote this up to try to organize my thinking on this. And so here's, I think, what I learned out of it. One is it was amazing having you as my chop coach. And I actually loved using Cody. It was just, there's something about the interaction model that I just really enjoyed. And I think part of it was you teaching me, right? Hey, there's some things that are better done in a chat window. And there's some things, if you can do it in one turn, that you want to bring up in that one dialog box. 2, it was super helpful for you to be able to say, hey, Gene, this is not very chop. And to me, that was code for stop typing. Instead, think about like how you can get the LM to do more of the heavy lifting for you. I think what I also really appreciated is, man, LLMs are really great at writing tests. Um, and yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about this later. You actually need those tests because I think there's a category of problems that LLMs are just not going to get right the first time. And you're not going to learn about it not working by reading the code. You're going to get them through tests. And I think a critical piece of that is that you have to be able to run those tests really quickly, right? In Clojure. How if I just show you? What was really great is when you have this REPL open, just loading the file just automatically runs the tests. So it's not running in a separate process in the command line window. It's just like right there. And it was really awesome, right? It felt just so good to be able to just work in the chat window up here, right? Say, just feed the tests in there, say, fix it, and try to coach it to actually fix the tests. But just actually having the tests like right next to the code was just great.
Because you could copy the test error messages directly in and speed the loop up that way.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So this is a really common chop idiom, right? Is what we did. And you were quite the natural at it, right? I coached you a little bit and I learned a lot just watching you do it. There's definitely a lot of stuff that's not intuitive enough yet.
Yeah. Well,
But
I mean,
yeah, you used a lot of techniques that were really good ones, like double checking its results and a large set of things that I think people could learn from in this video.
in fact, you know what? I think that'd be so useful, actually enumerating what are the techniques that are available to you, right? What are the moves that you have? I think that would just be a super great. That'd be super great to write up. Yeah, and so the other, yeah, I mentioned this felt like a problem. Doing something with the FFmpeg felt like a not this month type of problem, right? I could do it, but man, it's gonna take a lot of time, right? It's gonna take, I would say, probably 2 days, and to be able to do it within 2 hours is just awesome, right? It just felt like not this month, maybe next month. It's within reach. That was just an exhilarating feeling, and it got me thinking that there's two types of problems. I can divide up the problems into two categories. It's still a puzzle to me. It reminds me of the how to draw an owl joke, right? There's some things where the LLM is going to get right in one shot. For example, make the FFmpeg command to put captions in and extract at a certain time. Amazing. But there's these other ones that were like, man, it required a lot more coaching and cajoling the LLM to solve in a specific way. And I felt like it was having to draw 4 to 5 intermediate steps so you could actually get it to draw the owl correctly. And I feel like there's this intuition that I'm still trying to gain about what LLMs can and can't do well. So, like in computer science, we're all taught that regular expressions can't count, right? You need some sort of state machine or something, right? So, no matter how hard you try, but with a regular expression, it's never going to be able to count. I feel like there's some kind of intuition that at least I need to gain in terms of, okay, when can you expect it to do it in one shot? Or when do you require this totally different way of solving the problem? In fact, I wrote a little about that here. I have 2 examples of the first case where it just does it in one shot. FFmpeg command was one. Another one that just comes to mind was in February, where I'm analyzing YouTube screenshots and there's no numbers to extract, right? And so I wrote a prompt something like, here's a bitmap file, march down the left edge and look for like a red colored pixel. And that's the YouTube video progress bar. And then march until you find a non-red pixel and compute the progress percentage complete. I hadn't done anything like this in probably 25, 30 years. When I did it, it was Microsoft C++ and the MSC library. ChatGPT did it. I had something running in 20 minutes. So that was amazing. That would have been another 2-day problem. To get something running in 20 minutes, that sort of changes your life in terms of your perspective of like how things can be done. The FFmpeg command, same way for me. I actually reread an FFmpeg book over the weekend, but after this, there's no way I could have gotten that done. And I think that would have taken an hour, hours, and we did that in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Seems, as you said, it reified the whole owl. Amazing. But there's this other category of problems that LLM seems to have like more difficulty with. And I wrote about that here. In the video, I think there's 2 or 3 of these type of problems where it took a stab at it and it didn't work, right? The test failed. And one of them was generating in the SRT transcript. So that's where the captions, each one has a text, start, and duration. And we had this problem where the captions were overlapping, right? In fact, we had multiple captions being displayed at the same time. And it took, oh, Steve, it was terrible. It took 15 minutes to fix up that code. And it was interesting, like, if going back to my memory, at first, like, the LLM seemed to think it was like an off by one problem, like it's a less than or less than equal problem. So no, that's not the issue. And I remember saying, all right, here, compute an end value, and maybe that will help you do the computations more explicitly and correctly. And I feel like that's this other category of problem where the job of the human is to give it more intermediate steps to concretize or reify that owl into being. And I now think about it, so I'm wondering if we had asked the LLM to think through step by step, if it would have done a better job, or maybe that's inside the prompt already. But yeah, that was super interesting, right? It was like it took 15 minutes to eventually get to pass all the tests, and
Oh,
still amazing.
that's part of the chop experience, right? Is every once in a while, it really gets stuck in a local minimum somewhere. And you've got
Right.
to jump it out of there somehow. Maybe
Yeah.
using another LLM is something we could have tried, using a different
Mm.
model. We just pestered it with hints, like you said, better. But yeah, that's part of how chop is today. But it's no different from regular programming. You get stuck on stuff, you bash your head against it, you get past it. It's a lot faster with chop and kind of more fun too, don't you think?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, for sure. Every time that we got through one of those, it was like, Steve, that took 15 minutes, but like that was so much faster than doing it by hand. And I think the reflection for me is that there's these two categories of problems. Like one is there's a problem where the LM is going to get in one shot. One of them is this one here, Ricky Robinette. His daughter wrote a chatbot in 45 minutes. First time coding in Cursor, just incredible. Right? So it drew the owl right the first time, just like the FFmpeg, just like the bitmap analysis. And by the way, he's a VP of DevRel at Cloudflare. I met him at the conference. That was a small world. On the one hand, you have problems like that. And then on the other hand, you have these other problems, right? Where it takes a bunch more turns and you're trying to cajole the LLM to fix it. And I think it's because the second class of problems are more situated. The data models have already been chosen. There's a ton of constraints and correctness criteria that the LLM has to understand. And I think the more of those you have, the more likely it's going to take a couple turns to get right. And what I learned from the conversation as this kind of language, I think of it as like, all right, you're giving it concrete hints to help it reify the thing. And I use that word. We use that word a lot in the closure community. Can you describe why you called it reify?
It's yeah, sure. It's more or less synonymous with concretize and this stuff. It's just easier to say, but you have something that's fairly abstract. And these two types of problems that you're differentiating to me are the razor that separates what agents can do, which is about generations, versus these harder ones that they're very abstract and you have to turn that into something concrete. Right.
Mhm.
Which means creating like a real plan. Right? So you're realizing a plan out of it, which is a plan. It's effectively you're building a graph and each node in the graph is like the biggest sub problem that you can think of that the LLM could solve for you. And you've got to stitch all those together and get the inputs and outputs and everything. This is what agents are trying to do, but
Yeah.
it's really hard. And Chop is basically doing it manually, and you can just get better and better at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I feel like to get good at this, I think one has to be able to recognize how we in that first domain of problems where it's gonna do a great job in one shot versus this other type of problem where it requires this other skill set that can be learned. Yeah, Steve, I gotta tell you, thank you so much. This was such a great experience. I learned a ton. And I think the biggest thing that Erik Meijer was talking about is like, it is not fun to write code by hand anymore. This is so much more fun, right? Just like I don't want to write commit messages by hand, right? I don't want to write code by hand. This is a far better way to do things.
I think so. Yeah. This is exciting times. Thank you, Gene, for inviting me to doing this pairing session and for coming up with such a great problem to solve. Tons of fun. Let's do this again soon.
And we are going to do something soon. So you wrote this great post called "The Death of the Junior Developer," and as we were talking before prepping for that pairing call, just on this last topic, we're like, maybe the junior developer is like we have. What does it mean to be a junior developer who's going to die versus like a senior developer? But what is junior versus senior? And I think I'm
What
looking
is
forward.
developer, right? What is
Yeah,
developer now? Maybe we take the programmer part out because you're not really doing the programming as much anymore. Doing this, right? but developer is the more supervisory type. There's a lot of nuance there. We're going to go through this at the chat, and we've got a lot of people signed up for it already. So I think it's going to be a full house.
Oh, it's gonna be great. So I feel like these are concepts that are going to be important over the next in the years to come. Yeah,
Mhm.
Steve, it was so fun. So again, thank you.
All right, Gene. All right, we'll talk soon.
Soon.